if you can give me a thumbs up.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alan Singer,
Okay.
and this is the session on student climate activism and civics education. I'm a teacher, educator, and historian at Hopkins.
Alan, sorry, I accidentally muted you, so you'll have to unmute yourself. I'm really sorry.
Can you hear it now?
And we have a New York City high school student, Sadia Wiener from Brooklyn. We are also joined by teacher education students from Hofstra University, and we want to thank you for joining us. Over the last 200 years, virtually unregulated capitalist industrialization has polluted land, water, and air, and produced climate changes that threaten to become a climate catastrophe. The lives of billions of people are endangered by global warming, intensified storms, prolonged droughts, rising sea levels, and depleted food and freshwater reserves. Young people today confront a world they did not create, with serious problems the adults in their lives, parents, family, friends, teachers, and political leaders have been unwilling or unable to resolve. Swedish teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg warns, our house is on fire. As teachers and activists, how do we best prepare a new generation to be active participants in preserving and transforming democratic societies, in generating solutions that meet the needs of people, that respect and heal the environment, and promote international cooperation? Brazilian educator Paulo Freire argued that progressive educational and social goals can only be achieved when students explicitly critique social injustice and actively organize to change oppression, to challenge oppression. In the United States, the National Council for the Social Studies argues that producing knowledgeable, thinking, and active citizens is essential for preservation of a democratic society. That means students need the intellectual power to recognize societal problems, ask good questions, and develop robust investigations to consider possible solutions and consequences, and to act upon what they learn. Student mastery of civic ideals is measured by their ability to apply a range of deliberative and democratic strategies. We interpret to act what they learn in school and out of school context as a call for informed student political action. The week before the September 20, 2019 global student strike for climate action, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio tweeted, "New York City stands with our young people, their own conscience. We support the 9/20 climate strike." The city's Department of Education decided that students with parental permission could attend the climate action rally, and it would be counted as an excused absence. Then 2 days before the rally, de Blasio and the DOE backtracked. They announced that participation could not be part of a formal school trip and that teachers could not accompany their students. Unfortunately, the reversal came too soon before the rally to effectively challenge the decision. Tens of thousands of students ended up attending the New York City rally, a defining teachable moment, except their teachers were not there with them to teach. De Blasio and the DOE were wrong. Civics education means teachers must be out there marching with their students, modeling what it means to be active citizens, promoting democracy and social justice, and struggling to reverse the demonstrating climate change that threatens human civilization. I want to share a video of the student march. Madison, can you see it? Okay. You can hear it.
This is the largest protest I've been to besides the Women's March. This time it's kids striking from school for climate change on the second-year anniversary of Hurricane Maria. There are over 1,000 actions happening in all 50 states and 150 worldwide. So this is a massive movement.
We will not see the political establishment fail us. And for twice as long as I have been alive on this planet, we have known about the crisis. For just as long, the wealthy and the powerful have profited off the pollution, have lied to millions of people about the science, have choked our democracy with their goodwill dollars and stolen our future. Today, this generation is taking over. Our days of waiting for justice. Our days of waiting for action. Our days of waiting to be heard are over. Am I right? Than go to school. I know that sounds interesting, but I'd rather live to learn more and go to school today and learn less because our earth is destroyed.
It shouldn't have to take us all together screaming for climate change for us to help our world. You know, like this should be normal.
I am eternally frustrated with the decisions that our lawmakers are making because it is putting us, our lives, our children's lives, and our grandchildren's lives at risk. And they can't see that because they're old. And as like a young person, and we're all relatively young people, we know this is the one chance we have before we're gone. Our planet is dying, and we are doing nothing to save it. We need to march to help save our planet. All the adults are helping us with our future, like going to college and stuff, but there's no point if there's not going to be an earth for us to like stay in. We gotta like keep this earth, otherwise there's nothing for us to fight for.
I teach at a college, a local college, just Hofstra University. And when I was a former year senior high school teacher, so this is very exciting. One of the things I think to the students is that in 30 years where we're sitting out maybe on the water, I'm not worried because I'm 70 and I'll be 100. But you have to worry, and they are here, and that's great.
I really want to have kids one day, and I don't think morally, ethically, I could bring a human into the world knowing that this is going to happen. I want to live past 25 on an earth that's inhabitable. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we only have
You're down for living past 25?
yeah, just a little bit. Don't destroy your planet. We want to invade it.
The world is changing, and not in a good way. We need to save our world. We need to have a future. The Amazons are burning down. We need more trees. We need to plant more trees and save the seas. We need a future.
That was pretty exciting.
Oh,
Hi there, welcome forward. Come on in.
Now,
Oh, I didn't turn it off.
there may be a better way for me to work the sound. Tina, what should I do?
Yeah, okay. So the screen share is
I forgot
off
to turn it
now.
on. All right.
The sound is still going.
So 3 panelists.
Let me pause the recording. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think yeah, I'll pause recording.
And then we'll introduce the rest of our group. Adiola, why don't you tell people about yourself, who you are, where you teach, and why you consider yourself an activist, and how you try to involve your students. You're muted.
That's like the slogan, right? You're muted. What are we gonna do after Zoom? So thank you so much, Alan, for inviting me on this so important topic about climate change. I saw on the flyer that Vandana Shiva is going to be at this climate change, and I am so honored, even if I'm on tape, that I get to be in her energy space, even if it's through the ether. She is amazing and she's doing great things. Greta Thunberg as well is doing great things, and to be again in their energy space or through the ether is pretty special. So as Alan said, yes, I'm Adiola Teller Williams. I'm an educator here in New York, on Long Island, a suburb. And I've been teaching for over 20 years. I've taught in New York City, I've taught abroad in Japan, and I've also taught in the Middle East. And I am settled here now in Long Island. Why am I an activist? I consider myself an activist because, as Alan mentioned, when we teach, we just don't teach for knowledge, right? We're definitely teaching to get our scholars to know information, but how do you transfer that information and help kids apply the knowledge? And I feel that's where the activism comes in for me, because number one, I'm not teaching to a test, right? I'm teaching for students to learn how to think and to act on what it is they have learned. Goldie Muhammad and people like Gloria Lanson Billings, culturally relevant education, talk about criticality. Criticality, Paul Ferreira, as Alan mentioned, talks about student critiquing. Is the same thing. Activism. So getting our scholars to actually be a part of the world that we teach them about in the classroom. So taking that theory out and making it more practical. So I am an activist teacher, yes. I have had my scholars on many different platforms, be it climate change, yes, that's one of the platforms I would say that I have done the least on, and I'll tell you why. Climate change is an issue for sure out here on Long Island, but when you live in the suburbs and your grass is always green when it's supposed to be, and your leaves fall when they're supposed to be, and when they're supposed to, many of our scholars really don't pay attention too much to how the climate affects them. I think that they notice, but they are not as conscious of it as scholars who may live in the city, who are directly affected by climate change. And so my focus has really been on racial justice and segregation here on Long Island, and definitely hitting on the community activism aspects. Many of our scholars, however, here on the island are noticing that in their neighborhoods, in their segregated neighborhoods. I work in a predominantly Black and Latino or melanated neighborhood. And many of our scholars have noticed that we have grocery stores that are not as up to par as grocery stores that are in, well-to-do neighborhoods. I would think that that is a climate issue as well, because the foods that they're getting are not climate friendly, right? So you have a lot of meat, you don't have a lot of vegan options. And as we know, when we talk about, cows and chickens, they really take up a lot of water, a lot of grass, a lot of land, and that is a climate issue. So in that indirect way, my scholars are definitely activists when it comes to climate change. And so they want to see a change in their neighborhood when it comes to food sourcing. They also want to see a change in terms of the pollution, the air pollution that is starting to come into the suburbs. So right here where I live, there's a famous Coliseum called the Nassau Coliseum. And they plan on building a hub meaning they're bringing in more apartments close to Hofstra University. They're also bringing in, there's a Sloan Kettering is there. And so you're gonna have more car pollution. So my scholars are also concerned about that. They've been attending community meetings, civic organization meetings to express how they feel about the hub that's coming in. And they spoke to Kavan Abrahams, who is one of our legislators in charge of our district. And they spoke to him about how they are going to cut down on not just pollution, air pollution, but noise pollution as well. So my scholars are very aware of climate change and how it affects them, but they're also aware of the racial injustice that is here on Long Island as well. The fact that Long Island is so segregated has really segregated the how our kids or lack thereof, they don't interact with each other. And so you don't have that collective consciousness like you do, like you saw in that video, where you see white students and Hispanic students and, you know, brown, black students together, marching together. You don't have that here on Long Island because everybody's in their own little pocket fighting the fight, but no one is coming together. And so that is a huge issue in our community. And so it really reduces the number of scholars that can be aware of more of the issues around climate change because the island is so segregated, so they don't talk to each other. I run a program called Bridges with a neighboring white district, and I hate to say that, but it's true. I have a neighboring white district, and we're all Black and Latino districts, and we meet together to talk about these things. We talk about climate change. We talk about the George Floyd incident. We talk about so many things just to help the kids bridge the gap between the races, so to speak. And so when we talk about activism, those are the ways that I bring activism into my district and to my scholars as well. I actually am starting a club with my own children who are 7 and 9. I'm starting a neighborhood cleanup crew. So we are going to be going around picking up garbage in our neighborhood, and we are going to invite some neighborhood kids. We're making t-shirts, and I'm starting them young because I realize that, you know, the schools can do a lot, but it starts at home. So I want to get my own children, 7 and 9, into the act of learning about their environment, and so they can turnkey that when they go to school and be activists, and they don't have to wait for teachers to say, okay, come on, let's start a recycling club, that they demand of their schools to start those clubs and to get those kids together. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Adiola. Dennis Morales, introduce yourself and then discuss your activism.
Hello, so my name is Dennis Morales. I teach in the South Bronx. I teach at Taft High School. That's where I grew up. I mean, I grew up in the South Bronx, and I teach now where I grew up at. Taft High School is now split up. So, within one of those tiny schools, when it got split up in like 2010, I teach at Dream Yard. It's a part of the Dream Yard project. For those who don't know, it's like an activist group, and they try to foster social justice. Funny, I ended up at the school just like that. Like that was just where opportunity lied, being an activist. I started being an activist back in high school, actually, when I was in Pablo's class. Pablo was my teacher. Started in 11th grade, and it was honestly through education. It was literally like us, well, one, through education, two, the school that we were in. The school that we were in had metal detectors, and, you know, day in and day out, we just felt like, you know, we were being fostered through, like, you know, fostered into a school to prison pipeline, essentially, because, you know, we just got scanned. You had security guards, I'm sorry, they're not police officers, they are a task force for the police, but they're not police officers, who would like constantly ask me like, oh, are you high? Did you smoke today? And I don't smoke. I was just tired because I worked, I had long hours, I helped my home. So I was always tired, if I'm being honest. I kind of drew a line one time. We were mad when I had to walk in. It was winter time, and I had Timberland boots on. If you know it, that they have a thick sole, like 3 inches, 2 inches. So you have to take them off. I refused to take them off. I was arguing with the security guard because the floor was wet with snow. So if I took them off, my socks were going to be wet. So I refused. They made it a big issue, and that's when I started getting upset. Me and my friend was going through the metal detector at the time. His name was Ibrahim Malpika. At the time, we were going through it. We went into Pablo's class. We were really mad and frustrated. Pablo asked, like, yo, what's wrong? What's wrong with you guys? So we told him how we felt about the metal detectors. We told him about that. So he proceeded with the lesson. He said, like, you know, afterward, we proceeded with the lesson. We were learning about the English Bill of Rights, right? And we were learning about the Bill of Rights. And, you know, after class, he noticed that we were still upset. You know, he tried to speak to us. He said, why don't you guys do something? And it's like, what you mean? I mean, do what? We can't really do anything. It's metal detectors. That's what it is. It's a system that's implemented just from there. Like, you have no choice but to, you know, go through it. And then he was like, you should do something. He's like, you know, we're learning about the Bill of Rights, right? People were fighting up for their rights. They were fighting for the rights. They were, you know, creating these rights that we live by day. So then me and Abraham Malpika looked at each other. It was like, I wonder if there's a student Bill of Rights, you know, because like we're different. It's in the school building. It's a public school. It's a little different. So we went ourselves. We met up after that. We went to the counselor's office. I didn't have a laptop at the time, and he didn't either. So we went to the counselor's office and we looked it up. We saw it was like this blue book, and we recognized the blue book. The blue book was always inside the dean's office where me and him were never at. You know, where students the troublemakers get sent, you know, quote unquote, the troublemakers get sent to the dean. They sit there all day, and the books were in there. It was the same book. So we grabbed one. I took one. I think I still have mine somewhere here. I took it and we started reading through, and it was a Bill of Rights. We started seeing things, and then at the back of it was also like some of the handbooks, like some of the rules and protocols the DOE has to follow. And that's when we started learning about that. And then we looked online, and there was all these rules, but there was nothing about metal detectors and why they were placed in our neighborhood. And that's kind of where it started, like this whole idea of activism. Like, it was just through education. Like, we started looking through different things, started figuring out like that metal detectors were just arbitrarily placed. Like, some schools had them, some schools didn't, you know, and we're looking at like, yo, this is kind of funny. You know, there's certain schools in the neighborhood that do have it, some that don't. And the city's the city, no matter where you at, really, right? Because it's diverse, right? So we started to look through it, and we realized that there was no real rule as to why metal detectors were placed in New York City, you know, and New York City Public High School, specifically ours. Our school was a CT high school, right? I grew up fixing cars in high school. Like, that's what we knew how to do. So we had dangerous weapons right in the room all the time. They trusted us with that, right? We had dangerous weapons all the time. We had saws, we had knives, we had blades, we had screwdrivers, right? So those are tools that if you really wanted to cause harm, that essentially, and there was never an incident. I mean, the time that I've been there, even the times after that, there was never really an incident at Smith, you know, Alfred E. Smith High School, where I went to school at, where there was a kid stabbed somebody with something there. There was an incident in one of the shops or anything like that. There was never an incident, right? You hear all these incidents about other schools and stuff like that, but there was no incident in our school with none of that. So it's like, why is that being placed in our school? And we started to do more research and realized that we were just being pushed through a system, you know, that just made us feel like prisoners. Like, day in and day out, we just felt like prisoners. We just felt like we couldn't do anything. We felt trapped, you know? So, like, one of the reasons, and then I spoke to a lot of my friends at the time. A lot of people were agreeing with me. I had a lot of backlash, a lot of resistance at that time. I'm not going to lie, from teachers. It was very different because, you know, people kept sitting there and telling me, like, Dennis, why do you want to remove metal detectors? And I told them that wasn't really my goal. My goal was to understand why they were placed in my school. That's number one. Maybe removal is following, right? But my first goal as a student at the time was to learn why were they placed in our school? Why were the demographics of our school were 99% Black and Latino? Why were they placed in our school? They said they had one white kid in our school. Never saw him, but the DOE says there was one white kid in our school. Never saw him though, you know, but I knew everybody, by the way, and everybody knew me. Pablo could vouch for that. I'd never seen that white kid, but I would like to see him one day, maybe, right? But, you know, while I was understanding why was it in our school, why was it placed there? Why wasn't it placed somewhere else, right? Because incidents can happen anywhere in the city. Riverdale didn't have metal detectors, right? You look at Riverdale's right next to JFK. And if you look at the demographics of those two schools, right, one has metal detectors. I went to go play basketball. They have metal detectors. You have to go through it. We played RKA, which is Riverdale Kingsbridge Academy. No metal detectors when you go to play basketball. No metal detectors at all. You just walk in, but they watch you like hawks, though. They watch us like hawks. When we'll go in, they watch us, make sure we go to the locker room, things like that. And I became an activist because of that. Looking at how me and my friends were being disenfranchised and put through the system, we felt like we were, being treated as second-class citizens.
Dennis, before I turn it into Pablo, I'd like to respond to something that Adiola said and that you said. And I think it's very important in terms of this conference. During the COVID epidemic, the climate change movement has been in virtual hibernation, and we can't afford that anymore. What they have argued as a goal of this conference is what they call a just rebuild, that the movement for addressing climate change has to be a social justice movement, because Black, Latino minority communities have suffered the worst because of climate change. Good example is flooding. You have cities like New Orleans, like Houston, that are overwhelmingly minority cities, and they've been flooded because of the stronger hurricanes. But Adiola on Long Island, Lakeview, an area has a constant problem with flooding because it's on a tidal flats. And when high tides come in, they flood the basements. And that's a Black community. As a matter of fact, because of housing segregation, it was one of the few areas that Blacks were allowed to move on Long Island originally. And then in terms of what Dennis was talking about, talk about the South Bronx. Well, the South Bronx is what they call a heat island. What does that mean? Because it is so overwhelmingly asphalt with very little green space, the temperatures in areas like the South Bronx, which are all minority, as Dennis said, they couldn't find a white kid, are higher than the temperatures in other parts of the city, in other parts of the area. And as a result, people who live in those communities are more subject to stress-related diseases, like high blood pressure, like asthma, because they're living in these heat islands. I know Dennis wanted to say something else before we switch to Pablo.
The only thing I was going to add to that is that's where I became an activist in terms of how I don't force students to do like my students now. Like now that I have my own set of students, my own set of seniors, I don't it's kind of weird to say that because like Adiola was right there. She saw me when I was like 18, 19. But now that I have my own set of students, like I don't force the whole metal detector kind of, debate on them. But what I do and the project that I created within my school was known as the Two Americas. And we're planning to now they want to keep it for like years to come. But you touched on exactly what we do in the science portion. So I teach government and economics. For the government portion of it, it's like a capstone project at the end of government class, at the end of what is known as science research, right? So it's a science class, and now at the end of what is known as financial literacy. So we did like a cross curriculum project, right, where we did it. And basically science research is talking about Asthma Alley in the Bronx, which is right on 149. Financial literacy is talking about housing segregation. And, we use like the Levittown Covenants in Long Island as an example. And then in my government class, I talked about voting and how people have been disenfranchised in voting. And us it's 5 teachers that are part of that team that we created. And we just try to, get the students to start thinking critically about not only climate change, not only about healthcare, not only about, voting, other things that they might not think really affects them. And we created that project and they were planning to use it. We just did it this year because I mentioned it to them and we created it and I wanted to call it the Two Americas because I read a book like that, I read a book and it was like talking about 2 different sides of America, Black America and white America. And I came up with that idea to like kind of help the students to get, become activists, and one of our students named Lucky, she became an activist right after that. Like she started going down and fighting for herself. She's like she met like the borough president. She doesn't like him, but she met him. She spoke to him, and she became an activist. She's talking about women's health care, right? Asthma alley. Those are the things that really bother her, and she got that from just learning throughout the curriculum. We're just talking about it. So that's how I kind of transitioned from being an activist to an activist teacher. That's kind of what I do now.
Pablo.
Hi, Adiola. Hey, Anthony. What's up, Dennis? Good to see you guys. Hello, everyone. Can you ask the questions again? Because I was listening to their stories and
Introduce who you are, and
okay.
Why is climate change a concern for you, and why are you an activist, and how is activism part of your teaching?
Okay, so my name is Pablo Miria. I've been a teacher in the South Bronx for 20 years now. I've taught in 2 schools in the South Bronx, University Heights High School and Alfred E. Smith, the campus. Well, why did I become an activist? Well, my story goes all the way back to 2001. I honestly wasn't gonna become a teacher, and I had a Dr. Eisenberg here at Hofstra, and she told me go see Alan because I really needed to get my schedule done because I had to go to work. So I used to work from 11 at night to 7 in the morning, and then go to school from 9 to about 3:30, and then come back to the Bronx and do it all over again for a couple of years. So I told Alan, I just want to get out of poverty, man. I just want to get my degree and get out of poverty. I'm gonna be a lawyer, and I have a lot of friends who've been wronged by the law. So I want to take it upon myself to become a lawyer to sort of help out my community. And when I met Alan, I told him this, and Alan said, "Why don't you do it before they become teachers, before they go to jail?" And I said, "How's that even possible?" And Alan said to me, "Become a teacher." And I started to laugh because I really thought the teachers, all they did was give out, handouts and basically bore you to death. So when I became a teacher, I went to the school in my old neighborhood. I did not attend there. I actually attended Aviation High School in Queens. So I thought that educational neglect was something, it was non-existent because in aviation I didn't deal with it. And then I came to the Bronx, right? And then I'm in a school inside of a college campus. It was a building, and while I was teaching, the girls and the boys used to jump on the tables, right, and scream. And I thought they were just like trying to play a trick on me, and it was because there were mice running around the room. So I was like, "Are you serious? This is really happening?" I've never seen anything like it. So they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it." They started naming it Mickey and started making light of it. I called Alan. I said, "Alan, how am I supposed to teach under these conditions? We don't have an auditorium. We don't have a cafeteria. We don't have anything." So Alan said, "Well, just get the kids involved. Show them how to do it. Get them to do it." So I already knew the Ferrarian model. I was sort of playing around with the idea of Ferrarian and problem posing. So what I did was I started taking current events and I started using those as my do now to sort of compel the kids. But my current events weren't random. They're current events that deal with whatever the subject matter I was dealing with. But I wanted to show them that there's a continuity between the two. Like things just don't happen. There's a reason for it, right? So I started getting the kids to question the classrooms. How can you question something you've never seen in another classroom before? So one of my main points was to bring the kids to Hofstra University every year. Okay, so they can see a campus, they can see what an educational institution really looks like, so they can get the idea. So we started doing that, right? And that was working very well. Then I did another piece where I started, going with upper level schools, like private schools in Riverdale. And we started going back and forth. They did a podcast on that a while back, and it was extraordinarily effective in getting the kids to critically question their circumstances. Because again, you cannot critically question your circumstances if you don't know that you're in those circumstances to begin with, right? So as Adiola said, and this is interesting, Adiola, what Long Island is, condense it and then put it in the Bronx. It's exactly the same thing. Riverdale is like Garden City in comparison to Kingsbridge, which will be Hempstead. Throngs Neck is paradise in comparison to the South Bronx for the moment. Parkchester is now ultra working class immigrant enclave, which is completely different from the kids who are in West Farms who are impoverished, right? So you're going to have different kids with different issues. So what I did was throughout the years, I kept doing it. So the first thing that happened was I got the kids involved by questioning their own areas. I started having them just look around the areas and jot down information. What do you see that's not normal? Garbage on the streets. Let's go. What do we do about that? You know. So first all the problems, then a list of solutions, and then finally the kids. I got them to get so interested, because that's the point. The point is not pushing your political agenda. The point is to get the kids to critically question their lives in the larger context and how does it affect them. So I had them go into community board meetings, and then they went on their own. This I've been using ever since. I get them started, and then I am on your look. You can call me at any time. If it's about the activism, call me at any time. I will not tell you what to do. I will not. The most I will do is guide you appropriately. Like, why do you want to do this? Or is this what you want to do? Okay, so let's find ways to do it. Call me tomorrow. So see, I'm doing several things here. I'm getting them to read, increase literacy, right? So whether you read the Daily News, the New York Times, you know, on a web, a blog post, you're reading. You're being exposed to this. So, and then the ultimate thing is then joining. So I had them go to politicians. Finally, we got several million to the school. We got a new building. I mean, damn near a new building. We got a new gym. We ended up getting an auditorium. We ended up getting classrooms. We ended up getting a lunchroom. All of these wonderful things. And then they let us enjoy for about 3 years. And then in 2009, the college came and said, "You've done a wonderful job, and thank you very much, but now we need the space back." And the school was there from 1982, okay, all the way to so it's almost like even some of the teachers blamed me for being displaced, because they were like, if not for the activism, we would have still been in there. See, but you know, so I did have that pushback. So if for those to ask about pushback, there's always going to be pushback. So we fought. We were supposed to end up in Taft Building with 7 other schools. Because of the activism, the kids ended up at South Bronx High School with only 1 other school. The problem was it's across the street from a detention center. Okay, so this is why we were fighting, because it's like, you're going to take the kids from a college campus and put them across the street from a detention center. This is almost criminal, and they did it. They did it, and so, but the beauty of it was, from that point on, those kids kept going even when they lost. So they were going to, they were fighting in PEP panels. They started taking on other interests that had nothing to do with the class, but it was amongst themselves. In fact, just last week, a student that was part of that group, he is the chief of staff of the Assemblywoman here in the Bronx, and he came to my class, and I have one of the student teachers from here from Hofstra, and it was wonderful to have the chief of staff of the assembly person explaining to the kids how politics works and opening up opportunity for them to come and volunteer. So yes, we lost that fight, but the kids kept going. And so eventually I moved over to Smith, and in Smith, the same problems persisted. And again, I used the same method of problem posing, all right, using the idea of critical pedagogy and critical literacy, and sort of combining the two. I used to tell this to Dennis, because he did student teaching with me at last leg. And I said to him, we could put the best possible lesson plan together. But if the kids don't take to it and don't like it, we just did a beautiful presentation. That's all we've done. We haven't done anything, you know? So we need to bring them in. How do you bring them in? By, again, their lives must be set, front and center, okay? First, we're all human. They're teenagers, so they're super selfish and super self-centered. And as they should be. I hate to say this, they should be super self-centered. And part of that self-centeredness is having concern for others. So in 2019, right before the pandemic hit, that young lady you saw that spoke at the end, that was one of my students. By the way, Alan didn't even know she was there. Alan didn't know any of my kids were there. I saw this on the Young Turks, and I said, Alan, were you at the rally? So were my kids. Do you know, were you and my kids? They spoke right after you. And Alan was like, no, you know, but my kids, the young lady, 3 people after, that was Alan. These were some of the poorest kids, the poorest kids in the nation. I work for the 14th Congressional District in the South Bronx, the poorest in the nation. Okay, and these were kids that my principal said, Pablo, they're gonna leave. None of them are going. And purposely, I put it on a spindle on my website, so because all my kids showed up. They all showed up at the climate strike. They were all there. They took pictures. They uploaded the pictures. They wrote about it. You know, and when the next day came out, I told the principal, I said, "You saw what just happened." And he sort of ignored it because he was like, "Oh, yeah." But the idea was that none of them were going to show, and most of them did. So what am I bringing to the table? What I'm telling you is that this is not a lost cause. Climate change is a real thing. Okay. Right now, I'm actually doing a whole lesson with the student teacher. We did this whole lesson on housing inequality and how all of it connects. All of it connects to housing, policing, health. All of those things connect, every single one of them. And it's unfortunate that we haven't addressed those issues head on, but I don't think we can. I honestly do agree with Alan. This has to be a grassroots effort. You know, the way I see it, by the way, and I'll leave it with this. My original goal was to leave the projects and never come back to the Bronx. I never wanted to come back to the Bronx. Not because, just because it was, you know, it's impoverished. You know, who wants to be poor? And when I became a teacher and came back, all of that kind of went away and it became a mission statement. You know, we cannot hope that outsiders or anyone comes and fix our problems. Our problems need to be fixed from within. And our job as teachers is to sort of guide students to live the best possible life. And I mean with honest and truthful information, not fluff, not, you know, I'm going to teach you how to, you know, this word for the next 3 weeks. It doesn't make sense. You know, we need to tell them, listen, economics, ultimately you need to buy a home because that's how you pass on wealth. And there are plenty of tools. So I'm telling the kids about some financial tools you can use as a homeowner. They're telling me they never even heard of this stuff. Well, 99.999% of my kids are renters, okay? And they're generationally poor. So how do we break that cycle? And I think it takes a large part of the commitment to get the kids to sort of realize their position and then see where they want to be. Because it's not up to us either. I can't tell you, oh, you need to be middle class. This is important. No. Some people like, you know, whatever station they are, and it's not my job to make that judgment call. My job is to ask, you know, to sort of help them and guide them through this educational process through critical pedagogy. And again, I think is extraordinarily effective. By the way, last thing, when I was doing my PhD and I was putting out emails to who wanted to get interviewed, I'm going to tell you that I had over 30 former students, some of them lawyers. You know, one of them a pop star. You know, like not a pop star yet, but she's up there. You know, she's known in New York City or whatever. And so I want to say even one who took on the post office. Out of all things, the post office. I ended up learning about the post office through her. I didn't know all the intricate details about the post office. She taught me everything. She was like, it's a federal thing, Pablo, look, and they're getting rid of it. And she wrote to Senator Gillibrand and she got something back and she ran with it. And she ended up going to Hofstra University and getting a degree, and she's a teacher and as a bunch. So I want to tell you that this is not like one or two.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Adiola. Now for a special treat before we open discussion, I have a high school student who recorded her statement for us. Her name is Sadia Wiener, and she's a high school student in Brooklyn. And just incidentally, she's my granddaughter.
I want to introduce Sadia Wiener, who is a high school junior in Brooklyn, New York, who will read her climate manifesto.
Every inhabitant of this planet must contemplate the day when this planet may no longer be habitable. This declaration was made by President John F. Kennedy in his 1961 speech in front of the United Nations. He, of course, was talking about nuclear war and the threat it could pose to humanity. However, his words can be associated with another, fast approaching and categorical crisis. Climate change, climate change, climate change. I'm guessing you've heard this phrase hundreds of times. I know I have. In school, on social media, in commercials, in the last presidential election. But even though we are so familiar with these terms, most don't understand the true gravity of the situation that humanity has gotten itself into, or how it has gotten so bad. Government climate policies didn't start being passed until the 1990s, just a few decades ago. Former President Trump rolled back over 100 environmental guidelines, paving the way for capitalist corporations to think of new ways of plundering the earth and making life worse for communities that are already in need. According to the 2019 IPCC Special Report on Global Warming, many regions of the earth, usually ones with higher amounts of disadvantaged groups of people, have warmed by over 1.5 degrees Celsius. And while that may not seem like much, if this number reaches 2 degrees Celsius, severe heat waves, droughts, and other natural disasters will frequent many areas of the world, including cities with millions of people in them. A system that favors free market capitalism and deregulation has allowed corporations to profit off of environmentally hostile trade agreements and an absence of labor restrictions. The climate denialism of capitalist corporations and government officials giving slack are to blame for the crisis. And while on the surface, through ads and commercials that claim they are looking out for the environment, and then encourage middle-class people to make sacrifices such as riding their bike to work or recycling, acts that, by the way, will do little to change what is happening to the planet, these corporations continue to extract resources and use fossil fuels. No need to practice what they preach when they are making money. There are no consequences, and they know it. Capitalist corporations need to be held accountable for their actions, and that's not going to happen overnight. People, especially the younger generations like us, need to fully grasp what we are facing. Unless you want to leave a disaster-ravaged world for your children, it is up to us to solve the problems that our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents created. We will be unable to change the minds of corporations if we don't even truly believe what is already approaching. A few years ago, I came across an article about the Florida Keys. Every single year, this area is flooded by tides from rising sea levels due to the changing climate. Many living in those areas refuse to believe that climate change exists and is getting worse. How could these people not realize what was happening when they were experiencing it? I felt angry about what is happening to the environment and our world, and how so many people can choose to believe that it isn't. I closed out the article and continued scrolling through others on completely different topics. Florida was so far away from New York, and flooding wasn't the worst thing that could happen if these people were used to it happening every year. Best not to think about it when it's miles away in the future. So I went on with my daily life, going to school and my other activities, not realizing that that is the problem. We are all deniers of climate change, even if we don't want to admit it. Assuming that eventually new technologies will magically find a fix to the problem, or that it's not up to us to try and make change, is just not going to cut it. Yes, buying food in paper packages rather than plastic containers may feel as if it is doing something. But in actuality, the real change needs to be made at the top. Corporations need to be held accountable for their actions. So how are we going to do this? Before you make a purchase, find out where the materials come from. Were exploitative practices of extraction used? If so, consider not buying from that company and research others that use similar practices. Next, if you have a social media platform or website, consider publicizing these corporations with problematic practices and convince others to stop buying from them. In these media campaigns, refer to certain strategic decision makers, such as politicians, for people to contact. Lastly, encourage people to share your media campaigns so that word can spread about this issue, and how corporations are only making things worse by taking advantage of the environment and people in need just so that they can make a profit. As President Kennedy reminded us, every inhabitant of this planet must contemplate the day when this planet may no longer be habitable.
Come to the best part. We get to talk amongst ourselves. So
Now we come to the best part. We get to talk amongst ourselves. Now, our group had discussion, but I think it's more important to give people here an opportunity to talk about their own experiences and their own struggles as teachers and as activists. Just talk, unmute, speak, and this is the time for us to share. I need to learn what is happening in the rest of my world, because as you saw, we all live in little pieces. All right. Please speak. Don't leave us hanging. Is anybody a teacher in somewhere? A teacher? Jean-Julie, you're a teacher? What do you teach and how have you involved your students? You're still muted.
Sorry, yeah, maybe I have to help with that.
Okay.
Let me check you.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm from Taiwan and I'm a teacher in lower elementary school. I'm an art teacher. And I was a missionary before. And so for me, it's really like to empower the young people is really something important as a teacher really in the school, because I think we need to help them to see what's happening in the reality and in their future. And this is their right to know that and to confront that. But my question is, I understand for the teenager, they have really high energy and like they are more independent, but how can we help the lower elementary school students? Yeah, maybe to talk about some issues in their daily life or sometimes their attitude, behavior. We can talk about some issues. But is it good that we start with charity work to give social impact? Or because they cannot go on the street for sure, because of the parents, no? Or like to voice out with art and with artworks, something like that. This is something I would like to learn also from you, from all of you. Yes.
Well, Adiola spoke about what she is doing with her own children who are 7 and 9. And they are doing a neighborhood cleanup campaign.
Yeah.
And they're organizing other children in the community and then in their school to keep their neighborhood clean, because we have to keep our community clean.
Yes.
A project that I have been involved in the United States, we call it Trick or Treat for UNICEF. And on Halloween, All Saints Eve, children can go around and they collect money. But what we do is the children in their class decide what they would like the money used for. So they can decide if a country has had serious hurricane damage, they could decide that the money for UNICEF should go to children who are affected by climate change, hurricanes, things like that. And that has been a very good project, because the children then look at areas of the world and they could discuss that they need to help others.
Yes, I think really the main problem is the sense of interconnectedness. Like the children, they enjoy what's in front of them because here the kids are overprotected. And in this pandemic in Taiwan, we are not strongly affected. So everything is running the same. I mean, the school, kids going to the school. So sometimes I feel like it's not nice to say that, but we are missing one opportunity for everybody to stop and to slow down and to see what is happening around the world and how my behavior can affect the others. So I'm very grateful to be with all of you, and I think to bring the children to have this sense of interconnectedness is really, really important. Yes, thank you.
Rochelle from the Philippines, you kept on sending me chat messages. What would you like to say?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was sending you those personally. But anyway, we're from the Philippines, and I have with us actually many of our high school students. So if because in our school we do empower our kids, maybe we should hear it from them. Yeah, there's one student who shared actually a link, and that's Aliza. Maybe Aliza could talk, or maybe Tristan or Shella. This is their first time, by the way, to be in a conference like this. So thank you for having us.
Elisa, please tell us about your sustainability program.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone. I'm very sorry I can't open my cam because of internet problems. So our film, well, we have this film fest that our school does every year, and it's every year we have a different topic. For example, one group is mental health, or one group is climate change, and then we connected to sustainability education. So our film is about how climate change is affecting us students and our generation, and how schools can do something about that, and how schools play a big role in changing the ways of their students. So, yun po.
Rochelle, what do you teach?
Actually, in our school, we do have project-based learning, and because it's the Department of Education in the Philippines sort of like relaxed the curriculum this school year. We only do online learning in the Philippines. All schools are closed, no physical face-to-face classes. So what we did in our school, because we are a progressive school, we actually had more leeway in terms of having more time for project-based learning. And this is what we did. We embraced actually sustainability education in the whole school. So we're talking about from preschool, as young as 2 years old, they're learning about environment, and they're learning about climate change. And we up to high school, the grade 10 students, that's the most senior batch in our school. So we have been giving them block time to discuss about climate change and other issues about sustainability, and then we have them work on real life challenges. So in the last quarter, we staged a film fest on sustainability education, and all our classes and the project-based learning groups would have to create their own film about their advocacy. So one group actually is from climate change, and that's the link to their film. So we did that, and actually we bring also our students to younger classes. Like, for example, these high school students, they had storytelling in the preschool classes. So the preschool classes would learn about climate change through stories. Some of them actually would create crafts or do art classes with them, art sessions or workshops with younger kids, so that they get to understand also about recycling, about all the sustainability projects that they could do even at home. And many of our preschool students, they actually educate their parents, no, through our lessons. Wow. They get to understand already. They would need to recycle. They would need to, of course, to do the recycling. They would need to segregate wastes and so on. And that's really one of the successes in our school now. Despite the pandemic, this is one I think bright side of the results of the pandemic in our schools. Despite the limitations in our movements, we get to really be creative in the way that we educate our kids, not only in terms of academics, but really making them, as you said, better citizens. Because that's really how schools should really function, no? For us to build and make our students be responsible and caring citizens at present and in the future, definitely.
How long is the video?
It's actually less than 5 minutes, I suppose. Am I correct? Around 7 minutes.
Yeah. What language is it in?
It's in English.
Oh. Is your instruction in your school in English?
Well, yes, we do have that, but we also we use our vernacular, our local language as well. But our kids, well, in the Philippines we have 2 languages usually. No, we could speak English, and we could also use our local language.
If we have a few minutes, well, maybe we could show part of their clip. That would be very exciting.
Wow, thank you.
Tina, can she upload to play it? Can she do screen share?
Yeah, if she like, I can make you a co-host, Rochelle. Would that be fine?
Actually, maybe one of our students who could do that, kids.
I think I can do it, Pati.
All right, maybe Alisa could do that, please.
Okay, I'll make you a co-host. Let me see if it works. Okay, now you're a co-host. You should be able to share your screen, and also remember to share the sound as well. Thank you. And then, yeah, unmute yourself so that we don't have the double sound.
Buzzing bees, tall trees, we'd all want to document these.
The Philippines tops a list of countries most susceptible to hazards caused by climate change.
What is climate change? Climate change is the change in the Earth's climate caused by the rapidly increasing greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels.
The water crisis may worsen due to climate change. The Thwaites Glacier is melting at an alarming rate.
Delikado na tayo, so may mga lugar na pumapalo na 1.5.
Climate change has been affecting us in many different ways. First,
there will be a 4 or 5 degrees increase in temperature.
The planet was warmer by 1.2 degrees Celsius last year. Then just recently, we were hit by Typhoon Ulysses, which flooded the cities of Tuguegarao and Marikina. The second largest ice sheet on Earth is said to melt faster than previously thought. This means that we might experience sea level rise at a faster rate. The climate has already changed, with temperatures continuing to rise and precipitation patterns changing, and more disruptions certain in coming years and decades. If we refuse to act now, the appalling effects of climate change that we're currently experiencing will get worse. According to Sir David Attenborough, a naturalist, by the year 2030, if the deforestation in the Amazon rainforest continues, it will not hold enough moisture, turning it into a dry savanna. This is home to thousands of animals and is the world's largest tropical rainforest. As reported by the World Health Organization, between 2030 to 2050, climate change is expected to cause roughly 250,000 additional deaths per year from malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress. In 2050, the average temperature here in the country will increase from 1.8 to 2.2 degrees Celsius. This will cause low-lying cities to be submerged in water, displacing some of our fellow Filipinos. It will also greatly affect our agricultural sector. By the time of 2100, experts predicted for the sea level to rise about a meter higher than now, shifting part of the world's population to various places. In the same year, the rate of ocean acidification will speed up and disrupt the natural cycle of marine animals that may lead to food scarcity to humans.
So, what now?
Clear scientific evidence says that global climate change is happening rapidly due to human activities. The burning of fossil fuels, tree felling, the use of transportation to get to near places, and increased livestock farming. These are some other ways that help worsen climate change.
Education takes a critical role in addressing and responding to climate change.
Here at John Dewey, we tackle the issue of climate change very seriously. We connect it to all of our subjects in our classes, we read a lot of articles and watch documentaries regarding climate change. The high school students will organize webinars about climate change and invite speakers who are experts in this field. It's better to educate the students at a young age. So, in school, we try to teach climate change as early as in preschool. Considering that they are still young, we conduct activities where they will enjoy and learn at the same time, such as art, simple presentations, and storytelling.
We need to work together for the world to become better. Don't you want to live in a place where there's no plastic and pollution, where everyone can live in unison?
We wish, really wish, we could say this is a dream. But no, really not. The fact is, we're in this actual downstream. Your kids, your grandkids, they don't deserve to experience this. So how about act now? Start from the top of your list.
Let the trees grow as it is a large habitat for all the different creatures. Protect the environment. We can't afford losing its features. Let the fishes swim freely on the ocean. Don't throw plastics there. It will cause greater pollution.
Let the polar bears live on their mountains of ice by decreasing the billion tons of CO2 we advise.
Buzzing bees, tall trees, we'd all want to document these. Singing birds of paradise, blossoming flowers of a kind. Don't you want to leave them at peace?
There's still hope. There's still time. There are things we have yet to try. Start picking up the trash nearby. Don't ignore it this time.
Nature doesn't need us to thrive. Truth is, we need nature to survive. Let's all work together to protect our environment. Save the planet. Save yourself.
Elisa, can you close it now? Oh, Elisa, thank you very much. And Rochelle, you are an amazing teacher because we could tell because of your students.
Oh, thank you. But actually, it's not just me. We are a team of teachers as well. And their mentor is actually teacher Aldrin. Okay, so one of the participants here as well. What we do is we really have the kids learn much from experts. They also read up, and then we give them a platform for them to create a film like this, because they're anyway digital learners. They're really very good when it comes to technology. Anyway, thank you so much for your time for watching our kids work.
I just downloaded it into my browser, so I have it Yeah, if you don't know, if you click on it, it'll come up in your browser and then you can save it. I will show it to my students on Tuesday. They will be very impressed and they will be very jealous at what your students did. And now they will have to run out and do it with their students. Other people who would like to speak, who would like to share, because that is why we are here, to speak and to share. I know, Ole, you have, again, sending messages in chat. Are you a teacher?
No, I'm not a teacher. I just graduated from university, and I actually want to start a dissertation on climate change, which is why I'm attending this event, and just to, I mean, I've read a lot, but just to seek more information and see what's happening. And this, like, I want to thank basically all the teachers, because it's just amazing work that you've been doing, and especially with all the young activists. It's the most important thing that happens right now, basically, because it is also the generation that is affected by climate change the most. And so that's the generation that has to know most about it. What I think needs to enter the discussion a bit more is just the usage of media. Because I mean, I have a lot of nephews and nieces, and I'm actually already too old for this generation, but TikTok and Twitch and all that kind of stuff is just so massively on the rise right now. And there are topics there that get so much attention, and I don't get why climate change is not in that mostly. Like, people need to think about what kind of media they consume, because, well, the whole COVID change, to switch topic a bit, the whole COVID situation, COVID has been in the media for like 4 out of 5 messages for the past 2 years nearly. And the result of that is, like, at least in my hometown, I live in the north of Germany, in Kiel, every week we have a anti-COVID demonstration, sadly. Like, people walking the streets and just protesting against all the regulations and rules. And I think that's basically the fault of the media, because if like only maybe one of those 5 messages were about climate change, maybe we could achieve that these demonstrations would be about climate change, which I don't want to downplay COVID, but climate change is a much, much bigger problem, and a problem that we need to address very quickly. And yeah, if we all think about how we consume media, because media is basically just a representation of what interests people, because the more people watch a certain topic, the more it's going to be in the media. So if we put this into education, if we tell people, okay, just stop consuming stupid stuff, and maybe start consuming more of the topics that you would like to see more, which is, for example, climate change, maybe we could influence this in a positive way. That's
what are you doing your research on?
I think you know that writing research proposals and getting all the information is very difficult. The last 2 topics I was looking into was, first of all, how COVID changes, how COVID influences the change to a greener economy in Germany, whether it like enhances, whether it enhances the change, or whether it works against the change because of all the inequalities that get worse and stuff like that. And at the moment, I'm actually looking into direct air capture, because that's a newer topic, and a topic that doesn't get as much attention. And well, for a dissertation, you have to have a topic that not everybody's doing at the moment. So, yeah.
I think Natalia, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I really agree in everything you all said, because I really think teachers have a real important role in citizenship, and I really think that they should teach us how to use media. Like, that is our reality. We are surrounded by technology, so like not being able to use it right is a really big issue. And I'm so jealous. Rochelle had this amazing this opportunity to teach students of climate change, because like in Spain, it's not happening. Like I really went to a Congress of climate change, and like the teacher, when I went the next day to school, and I said, can you give me the last day homework and what you did? And so she told me, no, like you shouldn't like go to that Congress instead of attending class. And it was like, I'm so frustrated, like all the time. It's just this lack of support to students. So that's it.
How old are you, Natalia?
I'm 19.
So are you in university or secondary now? You're at university now.
Yes, I'm studying international relations.
I think you have to get angry.
I am angry.
I think that we always have to be angry. That being angry about injustice, being angry at people who are intolerant is okay. And we have to be willing to be angry and say to the teacher, that's not right. What I was doing was important.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
If you're going to penalize me, I accept the penalty because I'm an activist. We have to be willing, we're going to be penalized. You know, people put pressure on us, but we have to say, do what you have to do, because I do what I have to do, because I'm angry. That's why I like Greta Thunberg so much, because she's not afraid to be angry and to say, we have to do what we have to do. I think the point Ole made was important also. COVID has exposed racist and international injustice. You know, we look at countries that are unable to get the vaccine because they can't pay for it. And it's the same issue with climate change. The same countries that cannot afford to purchase the vaccine for their citizens are the ones that have the lightest carbon footprint, but they have the greatest climate change impact. And I think the other thing is people have short memories. That's why the media campaigns are so important. On Long Island, in the New York metropolitan area in 2012, we had a devastating hurricane that closed New York City for a week, flooded the tunnels and the subways. And it was a once in a century hurricane, except once in a century hurricanes now come every 10 years, as you know, in the Philippines. And people have short memories. So that was 9 years ago, people forgot it. They will forget it until the next one happens. And what we have to do is to make sure that people don't forget it, because it will happen again and again and again. And I think that is our job. I'm on TikTok. My grandchildren have me on TikTok with them and Instagram with them. So I learn by media from my grandchildren. The only rule we have is I could be their TikTok friends, but I can't tell their mother. They share with me, but not with her. But again, we have to do these things. I don't think we have a choice. We have how much? Yes, Tina.
Yeah, so officially we have 4 minutes left, and
breaking up.
there are 3 people that still wanted to say. Yeah, sorry. If I'm breaking up, I'm very sorry. I just wanted to point to the message that Liza sent in the chat. And then there's also Finlay and Fran who wanted to say something. So maybe Finlay can say something.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a student, I'm a high school student. I'm in my last year of high school in Australia. And I live in a very conservative, white dominated area. I run the school's environmental group, but it's really hard to gain support, not only from teachers and parents, but also the students. In the last couple of years, we've had, I'm not sure if you guys heard, but the really devastating bushfires that were occurring. This year last month we had some really terrible floods. Lots of people have lost their homes, and it's still really difficult to convince students about how big of a threat climate change poses. And it's really difficult to get them involved with like campaigning and activism. And I was just wondering if you had any advice on how to involve, especially with a lack of student support, how to involve students and kind of, I don't know, give them motivation to do something.
Yes, actually, what we do is we set up student activist clubs. Now, what happens in New York is they get official student clubs, and they then run educational campaigns in the school. We had on many different issues. This is what Adiola was talking about. In Adiola's school, because of the gun violence in the United States, their club set up a campaign against gun violence in their community. And they worked with the official administrators, and when there was a national school walkout, they organized to have a teach-in out on the sports field. But this was done as a student club. If you can get a student club set up, perhaps with a teacher who was an advisor, that makes it then possible for you to distribute material, to have meetings. And that is how we've tried to address it here. But again, by clubs, Finley, would they allow you to set up a club like that?
We currently have like an environmental club, but the problem isn't so much not being able to set it up, but actually encouraging students to go to it. Currently, we only have about 3 members, I think, just because people aren't interested.
I think people will be interested as the fires approach where you live, and as the Great Barrington is dying. I mean, Australia may be one of the centers of what is taking place globally in the world. You just can't stop. I think that's the issue. You have to just keep at it. Set up a web page that people can look at, post articles on it. Set up an email network, send out updates. You can't get discouraged. We can't afford to be discouraged because there is no planet B.
Thank you.
Tina, there was one other person you said wanted to speak.
I think that's Fran.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Perfect. So I completely can relate to Finley. I am a student in Bristol in England, and I'm currently studying global wildlife health and conservation. So climate change is the focus of my master's. And even though it's the focus of my master's, I realized how biased the information that we taught is. For example, we had a few conversations with my course director and the head of department about the fact that the way we're looking at the climate crisis is from a purely wildlife point of view, so biodiversity, these kind of things. But we have never mentioned how it's a people problem as well. So how, as we were mentioning before, this is about racial injustices. This is about, disparities between countries, and the fact that the bigger polluters are the least affected by climate crisis. And the fact that we're studying global wildlife, and every single talk and seminar we've had was, made by Cambridge scholars instead of people that actually live there. Like, we've never heard anything from Native people and Indigenous people. We've never heard their point of view of the problem. And I feel like this is a huge issue at the moment. The fact that all the information we're gaining is filtered through the European point of view. So the way we perceive problems are never from the people who actually live in those situations. And we've tried to raise these issues to again, the head of department and our course director. And a couple of us have been trying to have conversations with them and involve our course mates. And we faced a very similar problem to Finley's, where only half of us actually found the time to sign our letters and like get involved. And it's ridiculous because this is what we're studying for. Like, these are people that actively decided to spend 4 years studying this. So I completely can relate, Finley. The only advice I have is don't give up. Try and get involved with international organizations as well. Like, we can try and help, I guess, help each other, and don't give up. Like, try and get as many people involved as possible, and make it as relatable as possible as well. Like, the problem is that the way we see climate change at the moment is either something far away in the future that it doesn't concern us at all, or the polar opposite, something that we can't face because it's too big and it's too serious to tackle. So it's just, I guess, keeping a proactive approach, try and suggest solutions rather than just listing these huge, terrifying numbers of all the problems we're causing. And again, maybe try and get people involved from the whole community around you, not just the school. Try and get talks from, you know, experts and activists, and try and make it a bit bigger than just the school. But I can completely relate, and if we can help in any way, let me know.
So I just want to point out, so thank you for all your contributions. It's a really nice and lively discussion. I love it. I don't want it to end. The official time is up though. I think it's fine for you to stay on longer. I just want to say thank you for those that are going to leave now or in the next couple of minutes. Thanks so much for joining, for inspiring each other, for keeping up the good fight. Thanks, Ellen, again. I think I will keep the recording going so that we capture the next parts of the discussion. And maybe just in response to Fran and Finley, we have a really good training site with a lot of good resources on how to build your base, on how to get people organized, and then on how to do great campaigns. I shared a link in the chat, so maybe there's some inspiration there for you. And yeah, don't give up, it's worth it. There was another person who had a point. I'll just check.
Melissa from Brazil.
Yes, that's it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I understand education as a force to unite people, and I'm sure we all here agree that climate change and whatever concerns to the environmental issues we face today should be taught in schools. And I would like to know your opinion on how to use climate change education as a force to unite people in such a polarized world we live in.
That is a hard question, Melissa. That is why we are all here. Look, I know that Brazil is very difficult now. Other people have put in the chat that they are in countries where they do not feel free to express themselves and to protest. And I know that in Brazil, that is a situation now. And there's tremendous concern about government repression and about protecting the Amazon, because the Amazon is a resource for the entire world that Brazil has the duty to protect. The Amazon cleans the air. The Amazon recirculates the rain. I think that is a question that the entire conference must address. how we span our differences, how we work together, how we create a global movement. A big problem is that we live in nation states, but this is not a nation state issue. This is a global issue. And there has to be a way to span the globe. Even with the Kyoto Accord and the Paris Agreement, all the proposals are voluntary and nations don't have to abide by them. And we have to find a way to insist that our countries in our world abide by these climate change agreements. And I think that is the purpose of our conference, if I'm not right. Now, I put my email address into the chat. If you email me, I'll put you on my update list. It would be good to stay in touch. Thank you, Melissa, because you are from Brazil. I think we all are dependent on you because, as Joseph said, the Amazon are the lungs of the earth. I think we should stop, Tina, so people could go to other sessions, and I also have to go back to sleep. Thank you very much for coming. I feel very good about being here with you.
That sounds good. So let's close here. Thank you all for coming, for taking part in the discussion, for sharing the beautiful video. This is just the start of the Global Just Recovery Gathering, and it's going to be a really inspiring journey for all of us. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have fun. I hope you take inspiration and courage and power for the battles to come. Thanks for being in the battle with us. Have a good rest of your days.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone. Tina, you shut it down? Okay. Goodbye.